This is a wonderful question. This is GMAT being really clever and twisting one of the most commonly used tropes used by a lot of test takers to eliminate answer choices. That answer choices containing the word being are incorrect. And yes, I have to agree with that. Most of the times in sentence correction questions, the word being is seen as a redundant word or passive construction. But that's exactly what GMAT wants to trap you with. That as soon as we see the answer choices containing the word being, we would eliminate that without even a second thought. You see, again, the judgment of whether being is an invalid construction or not should be determined by whether it is actually a redundant word or whether it is creating an unnecessary passive construction. So this question is testing for meaning, and let's see how to work with this. Now the entire sentence is underlined here so we can work directly with the choices. The original sentence reads that heavy commitment to a course of action makes it likely to miss signs of trouble. Now, as I said, this question does require a logical attack. So don't get sidetracked by this pronoun. This is a dummy pronoun. The same pronoun that we use for a sentence like it is raining. That it is not referring to anything. It doesn't have to. And GMAT is fine with dummy pronouns. The real problem is in the meaning of the sentence. Heavy commitment to a course of action makes it likely to miss signs of trouble. But makes it likely for whom to miss these signs of trouble? When we look through the choices, it is very important to say that it is an executive who misses these signs of trouble. And that logic is not properly conveyed by the original construction. So we can get rid of A. Now in B, the subject becomes the executive, and this executive committed to a course of action, especially one that, see, all of these are modifier constructions. So in order to grasp the meaning in a very straightforward fashion, we just need to read around the modifiers. So an executive, ignore these modifiers, an executive makes missing signs likely. An executive makes missing signs likely. Once again, illogical meaning. We want to try and say that the executive misses these signs, but he is not making the missing signs likely. A very awkward logic. So B goes off. C reads, an executive committed to a course of action is likely to miss these signs of trouble when they appear. That logic seems good. The construction seems fine. Let's hold on to this. Now D reads executives, but we see this apostrophe here, so this is written in possessive form. And please do not eliminate this answer choice because it says being committed to a course of action. This is just put in the gerund form. So the real subject is being committed to a course of action. Now for many test takers this might sound a little awkward, but does this sound awkward? His action was questionable. Is this awkward? No, right? So you see, his action, the real subject here is the action, and the his is written in possessive form. So the action was questionable. In the same way, when we write something in the gerund form, we're naming this action being committed to a course of action. So the executives written in possessive form is very similar to the his written in possessive form. So if this construction works, this should also work, correct? So that's fine, but the real trouble is the usage of this pronoun them. In many questions, what can be commonly noticed is that if a noun is written in possessive form, then GMAT does not like pronouns like it, they, them, he, she, referring to a noun written in a possessive form. They would rather prefer a possessive pronoun itself, like their, referring back to the possessive noun here. So because of this reason, D goes off. Now answer choice E is exactly the choice in which GMAT is throwing a curveball. Being committed to a course of action. People see being, people eliminate that choice. But as I said before, this is just written in gerund form. just like cycling is a good exercise. So if this is acceptable, then being committed to a course of action in the gerund form is also acceptable as a subject. So being committed to a course of action, especially one that has worked well, is likely to make an executive miss signs of trouble. So this is also perfect logic. This is also very good construction. So now we're down to C and E, and this is where the real meaning-based decision has to be made. Now this is where GMAT kind of angers me. Explanations in the official guide are really bad. This is why people refer to a lot of forums to look for better explanations. But here is what annoyed me. When I looked at certain explanations given in these forums, especially this so-called club in which there are a lot of experts, most of them tend to give explanations which kind of favor the answer choice. So the most common explanation I found as a reason to eliminate C is that there is a pronoun it, and this it could refer to a course of action or the incipient trouble. And they claim this is causing a pronoun ambiguity, so get rid of C. That is absolute garbage. This is a test of logic. Now look at the logic, especially if it has worked well in the past. How can this it even logically refer to incipient trouble? How can we say that the trouble has worked well in the past? Obviously, it is referring to the course of action because that is what works well in the past. So that's not the real reason. The pronoun ambiguity is not the real reason to get rid of answer choice C. My advice to test takers is please do not use pronoun ambiguity. Use proper logic and determine what exactly has to be the right construction. So let's really understand what's going on in CNE. Because if you eliminate this answer choice on the basis of pronoun ambiguity, you might actually apply this rule to another question in which there is a pronoun and you might think there is an ambiguity, whereas in fact there is no ambiguity at all. So use the right reason. All right. So let's understand exactly what is going on between C and E and try to eliminate on the basis of that. Now let's work with the main difference. In C, this phrase, especially if it has worked well in the past, has been used as an adverbial modifier, especially as an adverb, and this whole adverbial modifier has been put at the end of the clause. Therefore, this modifies the action in that clause. An executive is likely to miss, especially if it has worked well in the past. So this adverbial modifier puts across a condition. And in E, this phrase, especially one that has worked well, is not being used as an adverbial modifier, but rather an appositive, a modifier for this course of action, especially one that has worked well in the past. So according to this difference, let's judge these two choices. Now let's analyze these two sentences. A student who heavily sticks to a strategy may fail, especially if it has worked well in the past. Now this is similar to the construction in answer choice C. And heavily sticking to a strategy, one that worked in the past, may lead a student to failure. And this is similar to the construction in E. Now let's go by the logic here. Now in C, this adverbial modifier is put across as a condition, especially if it has worked well in the past. So a student who heavily sticks to a strategy may fail, especially if the strategy has worked well in the past. So if the strategy has worked well in the past, especially if it has worked well in the past, why the hell would he fail if he sticks to that strategy? So we can't say that this is the condition for failure, that if the strategy has worked well in the past, then if he sticks to it, he would fail. That makes no sense at all. But in the second construction, heavily sticking to a strategy, one that worked in the past, this we know is acting as a modifier for strategy, so we can read around that. Heavily sticking to a strategy may lead a student to failure. Now in E's logic, what is actually being conveyed is that If a student heavily sticks to a strategy, then that might lead to failure. So this is given as a reason or a condition for the student's failure, whereas in the first construction, the strategy that has worked well in the past is being given as a condition for the student to fail. So when you compare these two logic, it becomes very obvious that this would be the most appropriate. So when you apply that to these two answer choices, an executive who is committed to a course of action is likely to miss these signs of trouble, and this is given as a condition, especially if it has worked well in the past. So if that course of action has worked well in the past, why is he likely to miss these signs of incipient trouble? But in E, being heavily committed to this course of action is likely to make the executive miss signs. So this is being given as a reason that if he sticks heavily to a course of action, then he might miss some signs of trouble. So C goes off. Our right answer choice is E for echo.